Chimpanzees, Minds, Society, and Survival. Part 1. Origins and Biology. Before we begin, I want you to look at something. Not a graph, not a specimen in a museum. A face, the face of a chimpanzee in the wild, calm, watchful, deeply present. There is a reason that face unsettles some people. It is because it is, in many ways, our face. The same forward-facing eyes evolved for depth perception in dense forest canopy. The same mobile brow that furrows with concentration or rises with surprise. The same thin lips that pull back to reveal teeth in a grimace. In them, the distant echo of our own social smile. Chimpanzees, pan-troglodytes, share approximately 98.7% of their DNA with Homo sapiens. To put that in molecular terms, we differ from chimpanzees at roughly 1 nucleotide in every 76. We differ more from each other across human populations than is sometimes acknowledged. And yet, that human-chimpanzee gap is still strikingly, almost uncomfortably, small. In today's video, we are going to go deep. This is not a listicle of fun chimpanzee facts. This is a 2-hour scientific investigation into what chimpanzees actually are, how they organize their societies, how they think, how they raise their young, how they communicate, how they survive in a shrinking world, and what, if anything, their existence tells us about our own. Let us begin with taxonomy and evolution, because context matters. Taxonomy and evolutionary history. The genus Pan contains 2 living species. First, Pan troglodytes, the common chimpanzee. Second, Pan paniscus, the bonobo, sometimes called the pygmy chimpanzee, though that label undersells the differences between them. Today we focus primarily on Pan troglodytes, though we will draw on bonobo research where it illuminates broader questions about ape cognition and social structure. The common chimpanzee is divided into 4 recognized subspecies. Pan troglodytes varus, the western chimpanzee, inhabits West Africa from Senegal to Ghana and is one of the most endangered groups, with populations in severe decline. Pan troglodytes elioti, the Nigeria-Cameroon chimpanzee, occupies the border region of those 2 nations and is considered critically endangered by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, with estimates suggesting fewer than 6,000 individuals remain. Pan troglodytes. Troglodytes, the central chimpanzee, holds the largest remaining populations, spread across Cameroon, the Republic of Congo, and the Central African Republic. Finally, Pan troglodytes schweinfurthi, the eastern chimpanzee, ranges from the Democratic Republic of Congo through Uganda, Rwanda, and Tanzania. This last subspecies is the one that Jane Goodall famously studied at Gombe. The evolutionary split between the lineages leading to chimpanzees and modern humans occurred roughly 5 to 7 million years ago. Molecular clock estimates have been refined repeatedly, and paleoanthropologists continue to debate the precise chronology. What is clear is that this divergence did not happen cleanly. Evidence from ancient genomes suggests there may have been periods of gene flow, that is, intermixing, between early hominins and proto-chimpanzees, even after the initial split. Evolution, as always, was messier than any diagram suggests. What emerged from that ancient forest on our lineage was a creature that eventually walked upright, lost much of its body hair, doubled its brain size, and developed language. What emerged on the chimpanzee lineage was something equally remarkable in its own right. A large-brained, social, tool-using ape whose cognitive capacities would not be fully appreciated by science until the latter half of the 20th century. Physical biology. Let us talk biology. Adult male chimpanzees in the wild typically weigh between 40 and 60 kilograms, with females somewhat lighter, typically 32 to 47 kilograms. In captivity, where food is abundant and physical demands are lower, males can reach 70 kilograms or more. Their arm span exceeds their height, a configuration optimized for brachiation and arboreal movement. Their hands are remarkably similar to ours, with opposable thumbs that, while shorter relative to finger length than human thumbs, allow precise grip. This is crucial for tool use, as we will examine in detail later. Chimpanzees are primarily knuckle walkers on the ground, supporting their weight on the second and third phalanges of their curled fingers. This posture protects the sensitive finger pads used for manipulation, but they are fully capable of bipedal locomotion, particularly when carrying objects, displaying dominance, or moving through open terrain. Observations of chimpanzees at the Fungally site in Senegal by researcher Jill Pruitz document chimps walking bipedally for significant distances in a savanna environment. That finding has obvious implications for theories about the origins of human bipedalism. Their dentition is adapted for an omnivorous diet. Large canines, particularly in males, are used in threat displays and combat. Flat-crowned molars are for processing plant material. Their overall dental formula is identical to our own. Their gut anatomy favors a high-fiber plant diet, but is flexible enough to process meat, insects, and eggs. Chimpanzee lifespan in the wild averages 30 to 40 years, though individuals in protected areas have been documented living into their 50s. In captivity with veterinary care, chimpanzees may survive to 60 or beyond. The longest-lived documented captive chimpanzee, a female named Little Mama at the Lion Country Safari in Florida, was estimated to be around 80 years old at her death in 2017, though uncertainty in her birth date makes that figure approximate. Their brains average around 370 to 400 cubic centimeters, roughly one-third the volume of the modern human brain, which averages about 1,350 cubic centimeters. But volume is a crude metric. What matters is organization, the relative development of the prefrontal cortex, the density of synaptic connections, the expression of specific gene families that regulate neural development. In all of these domains, chimpanzees sit closer to us than to most other mammals. They have spindle neurons, also called von Economo neurons, which in humans are associated with social cognition and self-awareness. They have robust working memory, and as we will see, they possess a theory of mind, an ability to model the mental states of others that fundamentally shapes their social world. Part 2. Social behavior and hierarchy. If there is one word that captures the core of chimpanzee existence, it is politics. Not in the metaphorical sense, in the literal sense. The power dynamics within a chimpanzee community are as intricate, as strategically navigated, and as consequential as anything observed in human political life. Frans de Waal, the Dutch primatologist, documented this with extraordinary clarity in his 1982 book, Chimpanzee Politics, based on observations at the Arnhem Zoo colony. The book was reportedly distributed to new members of the United States Congress in the 1990s. Whether apocryphal or not, the suggestion is apt. Fission-fusion social structure chimpanzees live in what primatologists call a fission-fusion society. The community, which may number anywhere from 20 to 150 individuals, does not travel or forage as a single cohesive unit. Instead, it constantly splits into smaller subgroups or parties that vary in size and composition throughout the day and across seasons. A party might consist of a single adult male, or a cluster of females with infants, or a mixed group of males traveling together on patrol. These parties merge and reseparate fluidly, governed by food distribution, reproductive status of females, and the ever-shifting calculus of alliances. This social architecture has profound cognitive implications. To navigate a fission-fusion society successfully, an individual must track the current location and recent behavior of dozens of other individuals, even those not currently present. It requires what researchers call a mental map, not only of territory, but of social relationships. Who is allied with whom? Who has recently risen or fallen in status? Who owes a favor? Evidence suggests chimpanzees do exactly this. They respond to the calls of absent individuals as if maintaining a real-time model of their community's spatial distribution. The dominance hierarchy. Males. Male chimpanzees are organized in a clear linear dominance hierarchy. At the apex sits the alpha male, a position that confers real reproductive and nutritional advantages, but one that is never truly stable. Unlike the dominant structures of gorillas, where a single silverback's physical dominance is largely self-sustaining, chimpanzee alpha status is intensely political. The alpha male is typically not the largest or physically strongest individual. He is the best coalition builder. The most celebrated case study is the Yeren-Lewitt-Nicky triangle, documented by de Waal at Arnhem. Lewitt, a younger male, allied with Nicky to depose the long-reigning Yeren, but Yeren subsequently allied with Nicky against Lewitt, swinging power back and setting up a dynamic triangle in which each male's status depended on the loyalty of the others. When de Waal published his account, the scientific community was forced to confront the fact that chimpanzees were engaging in behavior that could only be described as strategic coalition formation, deliberate manipulation of relationships to achieve power goals. Alpha males maintain their position through a combination of displays, interventions in conflicts, and relationship management. Critically, a successful alpha does not simply dominate through aggression. He polices conflicts between subordinates, building a reputation as an impartial arbiter. This broadens his coalition base because subordinates prefer a powerful neutral party to a tyrant who plays favorites. Christophe Bosch's long-term data from Thai forest in Côte d'Ivoire and the ongoing research at Gombe and Kabale all confirm this pattern. The most stable alphas are those who govern rather than merely overpower. Alpha tenure in wild populations averages around 3 to 5 years, though considerable variation exists. Some males hold the position for over a decade. Others are deposed within months. Challenges to alpha status are typically gradual. A rising male begins to challenge the incumbent's displays, courts key allies, and tests boundaries in low-stakes situations before mounting a full challenge. The transition can be violent. The killings at Arnhem, in which Lewitt was fatally attacked by Yeren and Nicky in 1980, shocked researchers who had believed chimpanzee violence rarely escalated to lethal outcomes. Later field data would revise that assumption substantially. Female social structure. Female chimpanzee social structure differs markedly from that of males and was historically understudied, a bias that has been actively corrected over the past 3 decades. Females in most wild populations are less gregarious than males, spending more time in smaller parties or alone with their dependent offspring. Their range use is more focused, typically centered on a core area within the broader community territory. This dispersal pattern has long been interpreted as competition avoidance over food resources. Females with dependents have the highest energetic needs and cannot afford to share food patches with large groups. But more recent research emphasizes that female chimpanzee social bonds, while less visible than male alliances, are meaningful and strategically important. Anne Pusey's work at Gombe demonstrated that females with strong social bonds have higher offspring survival rates. Sociality, even at low intensity, confers fitness benefits. Female rank also matters. High-ranking females get priority access to productive food patches, experience lower stress hormone levels, and, critically, their sons are more likely to rise to alpha status. This finding suggests that maternal rank is transmitted intergenerationally. High-ranking mothers raise sons in better nutritional condition, who develop stronger bodies and enter adulthood with better established social networks. In most chimpanzee communities, females migrate out of their natal community at sexual maturity, joining neighboring groups. This pattern of female dispersal reduces inbreeding. It also means that most resident females are not closely related to each other, which may partly explain why female bonds in chimpanzees are less intense than those among related females in species like baboons. However, in some populations, notably a Thai forest, females show stronger affiliative bonds, suggesting this pattern is not universal. Grooming, the currency of alliance. If dominance hierarchy is the skeleton of chimpanzee society, grooming is its connective tissue. Social grooming, the meticulous manual inspection and cleaning of another individual's fur, serves hygienic functions, removing ectoparasites and debris. But its social function vastly outweighs its hygienic utility. Chimpanzees spend far more time grooming than parasite loads alone would justify. Grooming is the primary currency of social exchange. It reduces stress. Physiological studies show that receiving grooming suppresses cortisol and stimulates endorphin release. It cements alliances. Individuals who groom each other extensively are more likely to support each other in conflicts, share food, and defend each other against third parties. It establishes and maintains rank. Subordinate individuals groom dominance more than they receive grooming back, a pattern of upward flow that both acknowledges and reinforces hierarchy. Robin Dunbar's social brain hypothesis, originally developed to explain the evolution of primate brain size, proposes that the demands of tracking complex social relationships drove cognitive expansion in primates. Grooming under this framework is not merely pleasurable bonding. It is cognitive work, requiring the maintenance of detailed relationship maps across an entire community. For chimpanzees with communities of 30 to 150 individuals, the computational demands are substantial. Intergroup conflict chimpanzee communities are territorial, and the boundaries between communities are zones of conflict. Males conduct regular border patrols, moving silently and in cohesive groups along the edges of their territory, scanning and listening for signs of neighbors. If they encounter lone individuals from adjacent communities, the outcome is often lethal. This was first systematically documented at Gombe in the 1970s, when researchers observed a series of brutal attacks by the Kasakala community on the newly separated Kahama community. This campaign of targeted killing eventually led to the extinction of the Kahama group as an independent entity. This so-called 4-year war at Gombe shocked researchers and sparked intense debate about the nature of chimpanzee violence. Jane Goodall herself found the observations deeply disturbing. She had believed chimpanzees were, beneath surface aggression, fundamentally peaceful. The systematic nature of the killings, conducted by coordinated male groups targeting isolated individuals, forced a re-examination. Subsequent data from multiple long-term field sites confirmed that lethal intergroup aggression is a consistent feature of chimpanzee behavior, not an artifact of provisioning or human disturbance, as some critics initially suggested. A landmark 2014 paper in Nature, synthesizing data from 18 chimpanzee communities, found that the majority of observed killings were committed by groups attacking lone individuals. This pattern is consistent with evolved coalitional aggression, not aberrant pathology. The adaptive logic appears to be territorial expansion. Communities that successfully eliminate or displace neighbors gain access to larger territories with more food resources and females. This logic is brutally transactional, and it maps uncomfortably onto patterns of organized violence in human prehistory. We will resist the temptation to draw facile parallels, but we also should not look away from the data. Part 3, Intelligence and Tool Use. In 1960, Jane Goodall sent a telegram to her mentor, Louis Leakey, reporting that she had observed chimpanzees modifying grass stems and using them as tools to extract termites from mounds. Leakey's response has become one of the most quoted lines in primatology. He wrote, "Now we must redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as humans." He was being deliberately provocative, but the provocation landed. The discovery fundamentally altered how science understood the boundary between human and animal cognition. In the 6 decades since, the evidence for chimpanzee intelligence has become overwhelming, multidimensional, and, to anyone paying attention, deeply philosophically challenging. Tool use. Breadth and sophistication chimpanzees use tools in the wild more extensively than any non-human animal. Researchers have documented more than 35 distinct tool behaviors across African chimpanzee populations, and the inventory continues to grow. Let us survey the most significant. Termite fishing, the behavior Goodall first observed, involves selecting a flexible twig or grass stem, stripping it of leaves, inserting it into a termite mound entrance, and withdrawing it covered with termites, which are then eaten from the stem by lip. The behavior appears simple, but it requires selection of appropriate raw material, modification of that material, and precise motor control. Young chimpanzees learn it by watching their mothers, a process that takes years of observation and practice before competence is achieved. Ant dipping is a variation. Chimpanzees use longer wands to dip into army ant colonies, allowing soldiers to swarm onto the wand, then quickly sweep the ants into the mouth with the other hand. This is a timing-sensitive technique that minimizes bites while maximizing intake. Researchers have documented population differences in technique. Some communities use short wands and accumulate fewer ants per dip. Others use longer wands and gather more. These differences persist across generations within a community, with juveniles learning the local technique from adults. This is one of the clearest examples of cultural transmission in non-human animals. Nutcracking is perhaps the most technically demanding chimpanzee tool behavior. Populations in West Africa, particularly in Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, and Liberia, use stone or wooden hammers and stone or root anvils to crack open oil palm nuts and kula nuts. The behavior requires selecting a hammer of appropriate weight, positioning the nut correctly on the anvil, and delivering a strike of sufficient force without shattering the nut completely. This is harder than it sounds. Naive observers who have tried to replicate it report significant difficulty. Infants observe closely for years before achieving competence, and the learning curve involves thousands of practice attempts. Notably, nutcracking has not been observed east of the Sassandra-Nzo River in Côte d'Ivoire, a striking biogeographic boundary. This suggests the behavior arose once in the West and has spread culturally within that region, while never independently arising in Eastern populations, despite the presence of suitable nuts and stones. At the Fongoli site in Senegal, Gilles Prouetz and Paco Bertolani documented something remarkable in 2007. Chimpanzees, including females and juveniles, were fashioning and using wooden spears to hunt small primates, specifically bush babies roosting in tree cavities. The chimpanzees selected straight branches, stripped them of side branches and leaves, and sharpened the tip with their teeth before thrusting the spear into cavities to stab their prey. The behavior was observed 22 times in a single year. This represents the first evidence of chimpanzees using tools to hunt vertebrates, a discovery with clear implications for interpreting the archaeological record of early hominin behavior. Other documented tool behaviors include using leaves as sponges to extract water from tree hollows, using sticks as probes to investigate beehives before raiding them, using stones as projectiles in threat displays, and, in captivity, spontaneously stacking boxes or using rakes to obtain out-of-reach food. These last behaviors require mental simulation of physical causality, physical cognition. Causal reasoning tool use is a behavioral output. What underlies it is physical cognition, the ability to reason about the causal properties of objects. Does a chimpanzee choose the right tool because it has learned a specific stimulus-response association, or because it understands something about the physical relationship between tool and outcome? A series of elegant experiments by Daniel Povinelli and colleagues in the 1990s initially suggested that chimpanzees' understanding of physical causality was more limited than their behavior implied, and that they relied on learned associations rather than causal insight. Subsequent work, particularly by Joseph Call and colleagues at the Max Planck Institute, has complicated that picture considerably. Chimpanzees reliably choose functional tools over non-functional ones in novel situations, transfer knowledge to new tool configurations, and perform above chance in tasks designed to require causal reasoning about invisible mechanisms. The current scientific consensus, though not without dissent, is that chimpanzees possess a genuine, if limited, understanding of physical causality. They are not full-blown causal reasoners in the human sense. They appear to have difficulty reasoning about unobservable causes, and their causal understanding may be more visuomotor than conceptual. But the difference between them and us appears to be one of degree, not of kind. Social cognition? Theory of mind. Perhaps the most contested and consequential question in chimpanzee cognition research is whether they possess a theory of mind, that is, the ability to attribute mental states such as beliefs, desires, and intentions to other individuals, and to use those attributions to predict and explain behavior. Humans develop a full theory of mind by around age 4, as demonstrated by passing the classic false belief task. For decades, chimpanzees consistently failed analogous versions of this task, leading many researchers to conclude that theory of mind was uniquely human. But the experimental designs were critiqued. The original tasks required language-like symbolic responses that chimpanzees could not produce, and later nonverbal versions yielded more nuanced results. A pivotal series of experiments using gaze-following paradigms and competitive food-finding tasks established that chimpanzees do track what other individuals can and cannot see. They understand when a dominant competitor has seen where food was hidden, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. These results suggest at least a perceptual component of theory of mind, understanding that others have visual perspectives that differ from one's own. The deeper question, whether chimpanzees understand false beliefs, meaning whether they understand that others can hold representations of the world that are wrong, was addressed in a landmark 2016 study using eye-tracking methodology. Chimpanzees, as well as bonobos and orangutans, watched videos of a human actor and showed anticipatory eye gaze toward the location where a rational agent with a false belief would expect an object to be, even though the subjects themselves knew the true location. This result suggests that great apes have at least an implicit understanding of false beliefs, a finding that substantially revised the consensus view that this capacity was uniquely human. The implications extend beyond laboratory curiosity. If chimpanzees model the mental states of others, then their social behavior, their alliance building, their deception, their apparent empathy, is not merely reflexive but cognitively mediated. Their politics, in other words, involves genuine mental simulation of other minds, memory, and numerical cognition. One of the most striking demonstrations of chimpanzee cognition is the work of Tetsuro Matsuzawa and colleagues at the Primate Research Institute of Kyoto University, particularly with a male chimpanzee named Ayumu. In a numerical memory task, numerals 1 through 9 appear briefly on a screen, then are covered by white squares. Subjects must touch the squares in the correct ascending numerical order. Ayumu's performance, after extensive training, reached a level that humans simply cannot match when given the same brief exposure time. In direct comparisons, adult humans and chimpanzees showed approximately equivalent accuracy at slow speeds, but as exposure time decreased, Ayumu maintained high accuracy, while human performance degraded sharply. Matsuzawa interprets this as evidence that chimpanzees possess an eidetic, or photographic, short-term memory for visual arrays that may exceed human capacity in this specific domain. This finding is interpreted in light of what Matsuzawa calls the cognitive trade-off hypothesis. As humans evolved language and the kind of long-term recursive cognitive processing associated with narrative and planning, we may have lost some of the rapid, high-resolution visual processing that our common ancestor possessed. Our memory was restructured, not simply upgraded. Chimpanzees also demonstrate numerical cognition beyond simple sequence memory. They can learn symbolic numerals, understand ordinality, that 5 is greater than 4, and perform approximate arithmetic. They do not appear to have an equivalent of the exact number system that humans develop with symbolic counting, but their numerical sense is substantially more sophisticated than that of most other mammals. Cultural transmission and innovation, perhaps the most significant cognitive finding in chimpanzee research, is the demonstration of cultural transmission, meaning the social learning of behaviors across generations within communities. As noted earlier, specific behavioral variants are maintained stably within populations and transmitted from adults to young through observation and imitation. A landmark 1999 paper by Andrew Whiten and colleagues in Nature documented 39 behavioral patterns that varied between communities in ways that could not be explained by ecological or genetic differences. This was taken as evidence for distinct cultural traditions. Subsequent work has expanded this inventory and refined the mechanisms, distinguishing between simple social facilitation, stimulus enhancement, and true imitation. Chimpanzees appear capable of all three, but the degree to which they engage in true high-fidelity imitation, copying not just the outcome but the specific method, is lower than in humans. Children famously over-imitate. They copy irrelevant steps in a demonstrated sequence, even when they understand those steps are causally unnecessary. Chimpanzees tend to emulate. They extract the goal and find their own way to achieve it, rather than faithfully reproducing the demonstrator's technique. This difference, subtle as it sounds, may be crucial to understanding why human culture is cumulative in a way that chimpanzee culture is not. We transmit techniques with high fidelity, allowing each generation to build on the last without reinventing the wheel. Chimpanzees transmit the gist, and each generation largely resolves the problem from scratch. Thank you for watching the first episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video for the second episode. Good night and take care.